Okay, now it is my turn to fire away. So I'll get right to the point. If you're involved in the sale of a business, whether you're the vendor or the purchaser, please, please make sure to consult with an employment lawyer. I've seen far too many people who end up in very bad situations because they didn't bother to get advice about the issues that arise when you sell a business, and they didn't understand what the potential costs or liabilities might be. And I'll give you an example up front. Obviously, I'll keep this anonymous, but there was a situation I was involved in about 6 months ago where two partners had built up a business in downtown Toronto over probably about 10 or 12 years. They decided they were going to retire. They got a good offer. Purchaser was only interested in the land, not surprising in downtown Toronto, I suppose. They had no interest in continuing to operate the business. And thank God the corporate commercial lawyer in that case was smart enough to tell them, look, you need to go see an employment lawyer. They came to see my firm, and we explained to them that, look, all of your employees are going to lose their jobs. And unless you build some safety into the agreement of purchase and sale, you guys are going to be on the hook for severance. And we did some really quick math. They had about, I think, 80 employees in that case. And what looked like a payday of about $1.5 million quickly became a payday of about $700,000 after they factored in all the severance costs that they would be on the hook for. Luckily, in that case, they got advice up front. They hadn't signed anything. And we were able to work with their corporate commercial lawyer to increase the purchase price because of that. But I've also seen cases where people don't get advice up front. They enter into agreements where either as the vendor, they're on the hook for significant severance costs, or as the purchaser, they don't take any time to do their due diligence. They don't understand or address what their costs might be if they have to let employees go. And they end up with 500 employees when they only need 400. And they didn't allocate the cost of termination. So if they want to let those extra 100 employees go, they're on the hook for substantial severance costs. So please get advice up front. In episode 9 of Fire Away, Anton Katz was my guest. Anton is a corporate commercial and civil litigation lawyer with over 2 decades of experience working with small businesses, including purchases and sales of business. He and I both know, when we've dealt with this situation many times, the simple reality is that when you sell a business, there are almost always employees that are involved and issues that arise because of that. What happens to the employees? Do they just go with the business? What if the purchaser doesn't want to keep them? What if the purchaser says, you can have your job, but you've got to sign this new, extremely onerous contract? You as the employee have to sign it. It can be worth hundreds of thousands. It can be worth millions of dollars to either the vendor or the purchaser. And what drives me crazy is that the corporate entities will spend months negotiating every nuance of the sale, but they never turn their minds to the employment issues. Or I will get a call from a corporate commercial at 4 p.m. on a Thursday saying they want me to have a quote unquote quick look at an agreement of purchase and sale. And when I ask when the deal is closing, it's tomorrow. It's way too late, but this seems to happen all the time. And I don't mean to fault corporate commercial lawyers, because I think in most cases, they're advising their clients to see an employment lawyer or to get them involved. But in many cases, the clients, get scared off by having another lawyer and more legal fees involved, which I understand. Legal fees are expensive, but the reality is you could spend a couple of $1,000s and find out what your exposure is, or you could not find out and then get a bill for a couple of $100,000 or a couple of $1 million later on. So to me, it's money that is certainly well spent. That's from the corporate side. If you're an employee, I see this all the time where people are just told the company's been sold. But in many cases, they're told, you know what, it's just business as usual. Keep coming into the same office, same desk. Everything's the same. You're just going to be paid by a new company, or it might even be the same company. Do they have to? That's a question that we sometimes get. What if they don't want to work for the new company? What happens if they choose not to? Does that mean they don't get severance, or are they entitled to it anyways? Or what happens if they're asked to sign a new contract? And what I often see is you've got someone who has no contract. Their severance entitlement might be 12, 15, 20 months. And now they're being asked to sign a contract with the new company that says, we're not going to recognize your past service. And if we let you go, you're going to get your employment standards minimum notice and nothing more, which means they've just gone from 15 or 20 months severance to maybe a couple of weeks. What happens if they choose not to sign? These are all issues that are critical. And yet it amazes me that people don't spend $500 to get advice from a lawyer so they understand it. They will either just sign and hope it all gets better. These are things that can't be ignored. And I encourage everyone to get the employment law advice. And I'll say what I often say at the end of Fire Away, which is that if you think you need an employment lawyer, you probably do. if you're in that situation, if you're selling a business, buying a business, if your company is being sold and you're being told that there's a new owner, get employment advice from an employment lawyer before, not after. Bottom line is these issues can be significant, so you need to get advice and make sure you know your rights. And at Rudner Law, that's our job. Our job is to explain these issues to you so you understand them. You can make an informed decision. And like I always say, feel free to reach out. And if we can't help you, we'll tell you that. But if we can, it's going to be money well spent. And as we often say, we will get you the best results we can. So that's my 2 cents worth, and you got it here for free today.